What has Gaijin done this week without telling the community? Well, they pushed their brand new update, but is it really like what they've promised in the past? Well, let's just find out. So as you can see on the forums right here, and the Crossout forums officially, we got the brand new update 7.30, so let's take a look. So as you can see, they got this brand new Night Riders event, which is no surprise. They announced this in their last devblog update, so this is really nothing new, but what is new is that they've released it a little bit more details. So, you know, we still got those 4 weapons, and then got the 4 paints along with a couple of accessories and wheels, so grand total of 13 new parts to this brand new Steel Cavalry container. But how do you get this Steel Cavalry container? Well, I'm glad you asked. You can actually get it by investing a lot of resources and by grinding out in PvP for this brand new Tollers unit. So, to make this container, as you can see, what is going to be the biggest throttle? Because of course they don't want these containers being common as candy, because otherwise these parts will lose a lot of their value. So to keep these parts high in value, what they've done is that they've made it about 1,500 scrap per crate. And as you can imagine, that is, well, that's pretty much most of your scrap a week. Because with the current scrap limitations, which is about 2,800 per week, and the fact that this event lasts only 3 weeks, you at best could make about maybe 6 crates worth of the Steel Cavalry. So with 6 crates, it gives you 6 chances, with a high chance of getting a blue part, medium chance of getting a purple part, and a low chance of getting a golden part. So with all of that, you have 6 chances to get those, and yet there's 13 items, so even if you manage to get every single item once only, you still need about 13 containers, and that is still pretty damn expensive. But also to be noted, even though there's a high chance of repeat, you can also open these boxes multiple times, so you actually do have less of a chance of repeats, but you still have a fairly high chance, because like I said, there's still the probability of getting that item. So even though there's 5 golden parts, those have a very, very low drop chance, so you still have a fairly low chance of actually getting those parts. So you're probably going to need like a good solid 20 containers or so for you to have a chance of actually getting all of these items. So what does that mean? Well, you're going to have to buy a shitload more scrap from the marketplace, and as you can imagine, the average price of it has gone up a lot, so to the average consumer, they're going to have to invest a lot of money into this game so they can actually purchase enough scrap to actually make enough of these steel containers, and that doesn't even factor in the workbench that you might need to actually use to craft these things. And if you have to rent a workbench, that's going to cost you a lot more, unless they make it like one of those free unlimited workbenches. Then that's just going to be very little money invested, but that's another point entirely. But that's the least offensive thing that came out in this event. Sure, they made a bunch of parts very hard to get, but at least they actually give us more parts, an interesting event. What is probably the most contentious parts, besides the map and new control layout, is this brand new container system. Now, if you don't know, this mainly affects the rewards from brawls, the engineer's crafting station, the weekly and the daily rewards. The seasonal rewards are unaffected, they are still the same, but those previous 4 things, these are the containers that replace them. And these brand new containers that are replacing the old ones, well, these containers have a very interesting trait to them, and that is they only contain parts that are temporary. The decor container is a different thing that just contains decorative parts between common to epic quality for about 300 scraps, so that's quite a decent system. At least now it's permanent and giving us an option. But the other 3 containers, well, as they say, it is purely meant so that you can actually test these parts on a vehicle of your design for 2 hours, that is. So you actually don't even get to keep these parts for very long. 2 hours is fairly easy to go over, and especially in a game like this where convoys can take upwards of 10 minutes per game. So you can actually blow through these parts pretty quickly. And which is even funnier because now these containers are worth like maybe $1 a piece, except for the Legend container, which is worth, instead of $4.40, it's now worth $20. So they've gone down in price considerably. So what a big point of contention is for this is the fact that now the container system, instead of being practically worthless to the average player because the drop chance and the amount of containers that you actually get was fairly low and fairly unrewarding, now the containers are, well, not rewarding at all. They don't actually give you permanent rewards. They actually can't even give you permanent rewards anymore. Yeah, you can get a common part from the Found at Wasteland container, but I'm pretty sure somebody doesn't want to get a 0.02 cent radar. I mean, there's easy and multiple ways to actually get that. Really, there's no point in the Found at Wasteland or the Legend or the Glitters container. If you're really itching for testing, you could really just load up vehicles on the Expedition and just test those out, but now you can test it with your own build. Ooh, I guess that was worth ripping out all the permanent containers. But that's not the final change they made. They also made one more change that was actually not listed on their last dev blog update here. So as you can see, they just currently mention the parts and the container changes, and then that's where it ends. But now this update was pushed with a brand new feature that wasn't initially talked about. So this was pushed the same day the patch went live. So as soon as this went live, people then found out that rewards for PvP have changed considerably. Decor parts and paints, you could actually get those occasionally through winning PvP battles, but those were extremely rare. Now you have no chance of getting these parts whatsoever. So instead of doing yourself containers and PvP occasionally rewarding decor parts, now decor parts can only exclusively come through a decorative container or the steel cavalry container. What this end up is going to actually do is just make decorative parts become extremely sparse, and vehicle designs will ultimately end up becoming less and less diverse. Which is ironic because the reason why they actually pushed this update, at least from what they tell us, is that they want to make decorative parts basically more valuable. With this change, you want to highlight the value of various dyes and decor elements that would favorably distinguish their owners on the battlefield, which is kind of against what they wanted to do, because all this ends up doing is making it extremely difficult for people to actually distinguish themselves. If parts, dyes, and decorative elements become extremely hard to get, how are they going to distinguish themselves? This really only kind of benefits the people who got their parts before the change, because then their parts are super cheap, and then they can actually distinguish themselves later on. Now, you ain't getting shit, son. You ain't getting shit. So, what the biggest point of contention was the container system and the decorative parts, but really another thing that kind of undermines this whole thing is the lack of communication. So with these two huge updates, you'd expect there to be numerous amount of developer comments and at least a nice lengthy explanation, but nope. You get one sentence explanations on the end of each change. So even though there is plenty of community discussion around this and a lot of, well, heated discussion, there is very little on the developer side to actually calm these, well, ravenous people. So if you actually go down the discussion here, these popular comments here that have many upvotes and are generally reflective of a large portion of the player base, as you can see, are not being responded to by the developers. The developers are going for more of the benign parts, not really addressing the underlying concerns of the player base. So effectively, they're kind of ignoring a large portion of people and ignoring a lot of their concerns. At least ignoring it through neglect as opposed to malice. But kind of has the same effect regardless of what the intend to actually happen. And a lot of this discussion was happening on their previous dev blog update. The issue is, though, is that, well, they didn't really talk a whole lot there. And on top of that, well, they also locked the forum page after a while. So now this one is just the only one open. And now, as you can see, it's becoming very sparse on their end to actually address a lot of these concerns and to actually interact with the community to actually explain why they made these changes. Their actual explanation is very scarce, and in the end, it just really agitates the consumer base even more because now they're getting surprise left hooks out of the field that drastically change the markets, and the developers are just like, well, bye. Well, thank you. I would love to know why I'm losing hundreds of coins a week now to scrap, but, you know, at least you gave me a sentence explanation. I mean, good job. But that's just my opinion. What do you guys think? Do you think Gaijin's recent changes to the container system and their brand new changes they pushed through were actually beneficial? Do you think their Night Riders event is undermined by their huge barrier and cost to entry? Leave your comments down below what you think, and if you have any good ideas, go and leave them on the forums. But other than that, there is various social media links down below if you have any fancy for that, as well as a Discord if that jingles your berries. But until next time, guys, bye-bye.